It was a Saturday morning. I remember the exact date because it was exactly 3 weeks before our annual family vacation to the beach house. I was sitting at my kitchen table, enjoying my first cup of coffee, scrolling through emails on my laptop when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom, Patricia, a group message. I opened it, expecting the usual vacation planning chatter, maybe a discussion about who was bringing what or which day we were leaving. Instead, what I saw made my stomach drop. The message read, "Final head count for the beach trip. Patricia and Dad, Brandon and Melissa, Aunt Carol and Uncle Steve, Cousin Jake and his girlfriend, Grandma Ellen. That's 9 people total. I've booked the rooms accordingly." I read the list twice, then a third time. My name wasn't there. I wasn't on the list. For the annual family trip that I had been attending since I was a child, the trip I had helped plan, helped fund, helped make possible for years, my name was simply not included. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she'd forgotten to add me. I started typing. "Hey, Mom, I think you forgot to add me to the list?" Before I could hit send, another message popped up. It was from my brother Brandon. His words appeared on the screen, casual and cutting. "Finally, a trip without the budget police. We can actually have fun this year." My heart stopped. Budget police. That's what he called me. The person who tracked expenses so we didn't overspend. The person who made sure we could actually afford the things we planned. The person who quietly covered the difference when we couldn't. That's how he saw me. That's what I was reduced to in his mind. Not a sister. Not a family member. A killjoy. An obstacle to fun. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you are watching from. I stared at my phone, waiting for someone to correct him. Waiting for my mom to say, "Brandon, don't be rude." Waiting for anyone to say, "Wait, where's Rachel?" But instead, more messages rolled in. Aunt Carol sent a happy face emoji. Uncle Steve wrote, "Can't wait." Jake's girlfriend, someone I'd never even met, sent a gif of someone dancing on a beach. My cousin Jake added, "This is going to be epic." No one mentioned me. No one questioned my absence. It was as if I had never been part of the family at all. I scrolled up and read the list again, checking each name, making sure I hadn't somehow missed my own. Patricia and Dad, Brandon and Melissa, Aunt Carol and Uncle Steve, Cousin Jake and his girlfriend, Grandma Ellen. 9 people. The beach house we always rented had 5 bedrooms. They had done the math without me. They had allocated the rooms without considering me. I wasn't an afterthought. I was a deliberate exclusion. My throat felt tight. I set my phone down on the table, my coffee growing cold beside me. The morning light streamed through the window, but everything felt dim. I wasn't just excluded from a trip. I was erased from the conversation entirely. I was edited out of the family photo before it was even taken. I waited. Minutes passed. Then an hour. I kept thinking someone would notice. Someone would reach out privately and say there had been a mistake. But nothing came. The group chat moved on to discussing dinner reservations and beach activities, a whole itinerary being built without me. They talked about renting jet skis, about booking a deep-sea fishing excursion, about which night they would do the big seafood dinner. Plans upon plans, layer upon layer, all constructed on the assumption that I simply didn't exist. Finally, around noon, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I called my mom directly. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice cheerful, almost dismissive. "Oh, hi, Rachel. What's up?" "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw the group chat about the beach trip. My name isn't on the list." There was a pause. A long one. I could hear the TV in the background, some daytime talk show, the sound of casual Saturday. Then she sighed. The kind of sigh that meant I was being difficult, that I was making things complicated. "Rachel, honey, we talked about this." "Talked about what?" I asked, genuinely confused. "I don't remember any conversation about me not going." "Well," she said, her tone shifting to something more pointed, getting to the real message. "After what happened at Easter, Your father and I decided it would be best if you sat this one out. You made things very uncomfortable for everyone. Easter. She was talking about Easter. 3 months ago, we'd had a family dinner at my parents' house. It was a typical gathering. Everyone sitting around the big table, food being passed, conversations overlapping. Brandon had made a snide comment about my apartment being small, about how I must not be doing very well at work. He'd said it with that smirk he always wore when he was putting someone down, that casual cruelty he disguised as humor. I had simply said, calmly and factually, that I chose to live modestly so I could save money and help out when the family needed it. That was it. That was all I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I just stated a fact. But apparently, that had made things uncomfortable. Mom, I didn't do anything wrong at Easter, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I just stated a fact. Brandon was making fun of me, and I defended myself. You embarrassed your brother in front of everyone, she replied, her voice firm. You made him feel bad about his choices. And frankly, Rachel, you've always had this attitude. Like you're better than everyone because you're so responsible. It can be exhausting. I was stunned. Responsible. She said it like it was an insult. Like being the one who planned ahead, who saved, who helped, was somehow a character flaw. Like it was a burden I was placing on them, rather than a gift I was giving. So I'm banned from the family vacation? I asked, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Not banned, she said quickly, as if the word was too harsh, as if what she was doing was something softer. Just, it's better for everyone if you skip this one. We all need a break. You can come to Christmas. Maybe. Maybe. The word hung in the air like a threat. Not even a promise. Not even a concession. Just a possibility, contingent on my good behavior, on my willingness to fall back in line. Before I could respond, I heard Brandon's voice in the background. Is that Rachel? Tell her we'll send pictures. He laughed. That laugh. It was the same laugh I'd heard 100 times. The laugh that came whenever he got away with something, whenever he won at my expense. It was a laugh that said, I got what I wanted, and there's nothing you can do about it. I have to go, Rachel, my mom said. We're about to have lunch. Think about what I said, okay? Sometimes it's good to take a step back and reflect on how you come across to people. She hung up. The line went dead, and I was left standing in my kitchen, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. I had been excluded from a family trip, not for anything I did wrong, but for being myself, for being responsible, for daring to point out a truth that made someone else uncomfortable, for refusing to be the butt of a joke without saying a word in my own defense. I set the phone down on the counter. My hands were shaking. But beneath the shock, beneath the hurt, something else was stirring. A cold, quiet anger. A realization that had been building for years, but had never quite broken through. It had been there, simmering under the surface, every time I wrote a check, every time I said, it's fine, every time I swallowed my own needs for theirs. And now it was rising, finally, inevitably, to the surface. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a function, a service, a resource to be used when convenient and discarded when not. I was welcome when my wallet was open. I was expendable when it wasn't. And in that moment, standing alone in my kitchen with the silence pressing in around me, I made a decision. If they wanted to exclude me, fine. But they were going to learn exactly what they were excluding. They were going to feel the weight of everything I had been carrying for them, everything I had done in silence, everything I had sacrificed without a word of complaint. Because I wasn't just their responsible sister, their sensible daughter. I was their entire financial foundation. And they had no idea how much they depended on me. But they were about to find out. For as long as I could remember, I had been the family's invisible backbone. Not because anyone asked me to be, not because I was praised for it, but because I saw needs, and I filled them, quietly, without fanfare, without expectation of thanks. I just did it because that's what I thought family meant. That's what love meant. You see someone struggling, you help. You don't keep score. You don't expect anything back. You just give. It started when I was 23, fresh out of college, working my first real job at an accounting firm. The pay wasn't great, entry level in a mid-size firm, but I was careful. I had learned early, from watching my parents struggle, that money didn't manage itself, so I budgeted everything. I tracked every dollar. I built a small emergency fund, then a slightly larger one. I wasn't rich by any means, but I was stable. And in my family, stability was rare. Stability was almost exotic. My parents had always struggled with money. My dad worked in construction, and the work was seasonal. Good months and bad months, feast and famine. Some months he worked 60 hours a week. Others he sat home waiting for the phone to ring. My mom worked part-time at a retail store, but her hours were unpredictable, always fluctuating with the store's needs, never with hers. Together, they made enough to get by, but just barely. They lived paycheck to paycheck, always one unexpected expense away from crisis. A broken appliance, a car repair, a medical bill, any of it could tip them over the edge. The first time I stepped in, it was for the electricity bill. I was visiting for the weekend, a routine trip home to see my parents, do some laundry, eat a home-cooked meal. I was sitting in the kitchen when I noticed my mom at the table, staring at a piece of paper. Her face was pale, her jaw tight. When I asked what was wrong, she tried to hide it, sliding the paper under a magazine. But I had already seen the red letters. Final notice. They were about to have their power shut off. "Mom, let me see that," I said. She hesitated, then handed it over. The bill was $320, 3 months overdue. Penalties added. "We'll figure it out," she said, but her voice was thin, unconvincing. Without thinking, I pulled out my phone and paid the bill online. $320. It was a lot for me at the time, almost a quarter of my paycheck. But the relief on my mom's face, the way her shoulders dropped, the way she hugged me and said, "You're such a good daughter," made it feel worth it. In that moment, I felt useful. I felt valued. I felt like I was doing something that mattered. That was the beginning. After that, the requests came more frequently. Though they were rarely phrased as requests, they were mentions, hints, sighs. My dad would say, "The truck needs new brakes, but we'll have to wait until next month. Hopefully it holds out." My mom would comment, almost to herself, about the cost of her prescriptions, how they kept going up, how insurance didn't cover what it used to. Brandon would casually bring up that his rent was late again, that his landlord was threatening eviction, that he just needed a little help to get through the month. And I would step in, every time, without hesitation. I paid for my dad's truck repairs, not once, but 4 times over the years. Brakes, transmission, a new alternator, tires. Each time, it was supposed to be the last time. Each time, I told myself the truck was finally in good shape. And each time, something else went wrong. I covered my mom's prescriptions when insurance didn't, which was often. I sent Brandon money for rent, for utilities, for groceries, for things he called emergencies, but were really just poor planning. A concert he couldn't miss. A girlfriend he wanted to impress. A weekend trip he had already committed to. I paid for family dinners, for birthday gifts, for holiday meals. I bought plane tickets so my parents could visit relatives out of state for funerals, weddings, reunions. I covered the cost of a new refrigerator when theirs broke down in the middle of summer. I quietly paid off a credit card my mom had maxed out and was too ashamed to tell my dad about. $1,200, gone in a single transfer, so she could sleep at night. I never kept a running tally. I never asked for the money back. I never even hinted that I expected repayment. I told myself it was just what family did. It was my way of contributing, of being a good daughter, a good sister. I didn't need recognition. I didn't need praise. I just wanted them to be okay. I wanted to know that they weren't lying awake at night worrying about money. I wanted to solve problems, to ease burdens, to be the person they could count on. But somewhere along the way, my help became expected. It stopped being a gift. and started being an obligation. They didn't ask if I could help. They assumed I would. And if I hesitated, even for a moment, if I said I needed to check my budget or think about it, I was met with guilt. I thought family was supposed to be there for each other. You're the one with the good job. It must be nice to have money to spare. I didn't have money to spare. I had money I had painstakingly saved, sacrificing dinners out, vacations, new clothes, a better apartment. I drove a 10-year-old car because I put my savings toward their needs instead of my own wants. I lived in a small one-bedroom when I could have afforded something bigger, because every month there was something else, another bill, another emergency, another desperate phone call. I lived modestly, frugally, carefully, and they mistook my discipline for excess. They saw my stability and assumed I had more than enough, when in reality, I was stretching every dollar to cover both my life and theirs. The worst part was the way they talked about me when they thought I couldn't hear. Or maybe they didn't care if I heard. Maybe they had said it so many times that it had become normal, unremarkable. At family gatherings, my mom would say things like, "Rachel's so practical. She doesn't really understand wanting nice things." As if wanting nice things was some kind of superior value, as if my practicality was a failure of imagination. My dad would joke, "She's the family accountant, always pinching pennies." He'd laugh when he said it, and others would laugh too, and I would smile and pretend it didn't sting. Brandon was the cruelest. He called me the tightwad behind my back, mocking my small apartment, my old car, my simple wardrobe. He compared me to his friend's sisters, who had nice clothes and took lavish vacations and didn't live like they were still in college. He didn't see the sacrifices I made. He didn't see the transfers that left my account and appeared in his. He just saw someone who didn't live like him, and he assumed it was because I couldn't, not because I was choosing to give instead of spend. And yet, despite the mocking, despite the dismissals, I kept giving. I kept paying. I kept showing up with my checkbook open and my mouth shut, because I believed that if I just loved them enough, if I just helped them enough, they would eventually see my value. They would appreciate me. They would love me back the way I loved them. I thought I was making deposits in a bank of goodwill, and eventually, the balance would pay off. But the beach trip exclusion shattered that belief. It showed me, in stark and undeniable terms, that my value to them was purely transactional. I was useful when they needed money. I was disposable when they didn't. I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was a resource, a credit line, an ATM with a heartbeat. And resources don't get invited to family vacations. Resources don't have feelings that need to be considered. Resources just give until they run out. That realization, cold and sharp, cut through years of denial, and it changed everything. The exclusion from the beach trip wasn't a private matter. It became a public spectacle, played out on a stage where everyone could see, or at least everyone in the family. The group chat, which had been the source of my initial pain, became the ongoing venue for my humiliation. Over the next few days, the chat filled with excitement about the trip. Photos of beach gear being purchased, screenshots of restaurant reservations, debates about whether to rent kayaks or paddleboards, links to weather forecasts, predictions of perfect sunny days. Each message was a reminder that life was going on without me, that my absence wasn't just accepted but celebrated. They were planning a future that I wasn't part of, and they were doing it right in front of me. I thought about leaving the chat, muting it, at least. But something kept me watching, some masochistic need to see exactly what they were doing, exactly what they were saying. I told myself I was gathering information. Really, I think I was just hurting myself, pressing on the bruise to see how much it would hurt. Then came the comments. Not about me directly, not at first, but about the trip being different this year. Aunt Carol wrote, "So nice to have a relaxed vibe this time. I feel like we can all just breathe." Uncle Steve added, "Yeah, no one's stressing about every little expense. It's going to be great." Brandon, predictably, was the most pointed. "Finally, we can enjoy ourselves without someone counting every penny and making everyone feel guilty for wanting to have a good time." Counting every penny. making everyone feel guilty, as if tracking a budget was a moral failure, as if preventing financial disaster was an imposition, as if my responsibility was a burden they had been suffering under, a weight on their fun that they were finally free of. I wanted to respond. My fingers itched to type. I wanted to tell them exactly how much of their relaxed vibe I had funded over the years. I wanted to list every bill, every transfer, every quiet sacrifice I had made so they could live their lives without worry. But I didn't. I stayed silent, watching the messages roll in, each one a small cut. I knew that if I said anything, I would be the problem. I would be the one making drama, starting conflict, ruining the mood. They had already cast me as the villain. Anything I said would just confirm their story. The worst was when they started planning the meals. My mom posted a proposed menu for the week, a detailed list of what they would eat each night. It was elaborate, the kind of meals we never had when I was involved in planning because I knew we couldn't afford them. Lobster one night, filet mignon another, shrimp cocktail appetizers, bottles of expensive wine, fancy desserts from a local bakery. The projected cost was astronomical. Just the food alone was probably going to be over $1,000, not counting the restaurants they were planning to try. "This looks amazing, Mom," Brandon wrote. "Way better than the usual boring stuff. This is what vacation is supposed to be. Boring stuff." The meals I had planned were boring, because I made sure we could actually pay for them without going into debt. The meals I had often partially funded from my own pocket were boring, because I didn't let them spend money they didn't have. The meals that kept us solvent were boring, because they were within a budget. Jake's girlfriend, this stranger who had never met me, who knew nothing about our family except what she had been told, chimed in. "Sounds like this trip is going to be incredible. So glad I get to be part of such a fun family." Fun family. A family that excluded one of its own and mocked her in a group chat. A family that only knew how to have fun when someone else was footing the bill or when the person who managed the money was safely out of sight. I put my phone down and walked away from it. I couldn't watch anymore. The humiliation was too much, too raw. But more than the hurt feelings, more than the sting of rejection, was the overwhelming sense of injustice. They were planning a lavish trip, one they absolutely could not afford based on what I knew of their finances. And they were doing it without any thought of who would pick up the pieces when the bills came due. Because they assumed I would. Even though they had excluded me, even though they had mocked me, even though they had called me names and left me off the list, they still assumed that when the credit card bills arrived, when the unexpected expenses piled up, I would be there to bail them out. I always was. Why would this time be any different? That assumption, that unspoken expectation, was the most insulting thing of all. They could exclude me from the fun, but they still expected me to fund it. They could mock my frugality, but they still depended on my money. They could treat me as expendable, but they still saw me as their safety net. The public humiliation extended beyond the group chat. A few days after the exclusion, I was at a coffee shop near my office, working on my laptop, trying to focus on something other than my family. The door opened and I heard a familiar voice. Denise Harmon, a neighbor of my parents, someone who had known me since I was a child. She had been at my birthday parties, at my graduation. She was one of those community fixtures who knew everyone's business. She spotted me and came over, her face arranged in an expression of sympathy. "Rachel, honey, I heard about the beach trip," she said, her voice low, conspiratorial, as if we were sharing a secret. "I'm so sorry. Your mom mentioned you decided not to go this year. She said you've been very stressed with work and needed some alone time. I think it's good that you're taking care of yourself." I stared at her. Decided not to go. Needed alone time. That was the story they were telling. They had reframed my exclusion as my choice, my problem. They had made me the one who pulled away, not the one who was pushed out. They had controlled the narrative, and in their version, they were the concerned family giving me space, not the cruel family shutting me out. "That's not exactly what happened," I said, my voice tight. Denise looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Oh well, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Families, you know, things get complicated. I'm sure you'll all work it out." She patted my arm, a gesture that was meant to be comforting but felt condescending, and hurried away. Things get complicated. The universal excuse for bad behavior. The way people avoid accountability by blaming the situation instead of the actors. As if exclusion just happened, like weather. As if cruelty was a misunderstanding, a mix-up, something that would sort itself out with time. I sat there, my coffee growing cold, and felt a new layer of pain. It wasn't just that they had excluded me. It was that they had lied about it. They had spun a story where they were the reasonable ones and I was the one with the problem. They had told the community that I chose this, that I needed space, that I was stressed. And people believed them. Why wouldn't they? My mom was warm and friendly. My dad was a good guy. Brandon was charming when he wanted to be. I was the quiet one, the serious one, the one who kept to herself. Of course I was the one having a crisis. Of course I was the one who needed alone time. The humiliation wasn't just in the group chat. It was spreading, seeping into my community, my reputation. People would look at me with pity now. Poor Rachel, so stressed she couldn't even go on the family trip. They wouldn't know the truth. And I had no way to fight it, because anything I said would just sound like sour grapes, like a bitter outcast trying to stir up drama. So I said nothing. I swallowed the humiliation. I smiled at Denise's retreating back, and I let the anger build, let it solidify into something hard and useful. The week of the beach trip arrived. I had taken the time off work months ago, back when I still thought I was going. I had blocked out my calendar, arranged coverage for my projects, counted down the days. I had planned to use the time to relax, to enjoy the ocean, to spend time with my family. Instead, I was alone in my apartment, acutely aware of exactly where they were and what they were doing at every moment. I tried to distract myself. I cleaned my apartment from top to bottom, scrubbing floors, organizing closets, wiping down surfaces that were already clean. I alphabetized my bookshelf. I reorganized my kitchen cabinets. I went for long runs, pushing myself until my lungs burned and my legs ached, trying to exhaust myself into numbness. I read books I'd been meaning to get to for months, but my eyes slid over the words without absorbing them. No matter what I did, my mind kept drifting back to them. I imagined them at the beach house, the one we'd been renting for years, the one I knew as well as my own apartment. I pictured them on the sand, laughing, building sandcastles with the kids, taking photos that would later fill social media feeds. I imagined the dinners, the expensive meals my mom had planned, the lobster and steak and wine. I imagined them around the table, clinking glasses, telling stories, enjoying each other's company. I imagined them not thinking about me at all. The loneliness was physical. It sat in my chest like a weight, making it hard to breathe. It tightened my throat, making it hard to swallow. I had spent so much of my life trying to be part of this family, trying to earn my place, and now I was completely outside of it. I was a ghost, invisible, and forgotten. I was alone in a way I hadn't been since I was a child, afraid of the dark, afraid of being left behind. On Wednesday, 3 days into the trip, I got a text from my mom. It was a photo. The whole group was on the beach, arranged in a line with the sunset blazing behind them. Big smiles on their faces, arms around each other, the perfect family portrait. I could identify everyone. My parents in the center, Brandon and his girlfriend Melissa, Aunt Carol and Uncle Steve, Jake with his arm around his girlfriend, even Grandma Ellen, sitting in a beach chair, grinning. 9 people, just as the list had said. A complete family. The caption read, "Wish you were here, miss you. Wish you were here, miss you." The words were a slap. She didn't wish I was there. If she did, she would have invited me. She didn't miss me. She missed the idea of me. The illusion that we were a close, loving family who just happened to be separated by circumstance. The photo was for her benefit, not mine. It was so she could tell herself, and anyone who asked, that she had reached out, that she had tried to include me. It was documentation of her own virtue, evidence that she wasn't the bad guy. I stared at the photo for a long time, I zoomed in on their faces, on their smiles. Brandon was in the center, holding a drink, his usual confident grin. Behind him, I could see a table set for dinner. On it were lobster tails arranged on a platter, a bucket of oysters, bottles of champagne. The extravagance was almost obscene. They weren't even trying to hide it. They were celebrating their luxury, documenting their excess. They were spending money they didn't have. Money I knew they didn't have, because I knew their finances better than they did. I had seen the bills they couldn't pay, the statements they hid, the desperate late-night phone calls. I knew they would end this trip in debt. And I knew, with a certainty that made me sick, that they would ask me to pay for it. They would come home with maxed-out credit cards and overdue bills, and they would call me, and they would expect me to fix it. I typed back a simple response. Looks like fun. Enjoy. I didn't say I missed them too. I couldn't make myself lie. I stared at the message after I sent it. 2 words that said so little, that hid so much. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city outside my window. A siren in the distance. A car honking. The murmur of people walking by on the street below. Normal sounds of a normal night, but everything felt strange, off-kilter. Something fundamental was shifting inside me. The loneliness was still there. The hurt. But they were changing, hardening into something else. Resolve, determination. A cold clarity I had never felt before. They had made their choice. They had chosen exclusion, mockery, humiliation. They had chosen to treat me as disposable, to erase me from the family picture while still expecting me to pay for the frame. And now I was going to make a choice too. I was going to let them feel what it was like without me. Not just without my presence at a beach dinner, but without my support, my money, my constant, reliable, taken-for-granted assistance. I was going to step back and let them see, truly see for the first time, what I had been providing all along. It wasn't revenge. That's not what it felt like. It felt more like clarity. It felt like finally telling the truth after years of polite lies. It was finally, after years of being the invisible safety net, allowing them to fall. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Because as long as I kept catching them, they would never learn to stand on their own. As long as I kept giving without boundaries, I would never be seen as anything more than a resource to be used. The loneliness didn't disappear that night, but it transformed. It became fuel. It became purpose. It became the beginning of my liberation. The beach trip ended on a Sunday. I knew because the group chat suddenly went quiet. No more photos, no more updates, no more excited discussions of what they were going to do next. Just silence. I imagined them packing up the beach house, loading the cars, making the drive home. I imagined them returning to their regular lives, the vacation high fading into the routine of work and bills and obligations. I wondered if they thought about me at all. Probably not. On Monday morning, my phone rang. I knew it would. I had been waiting for it. The vacation was over. The bills were coming due. It was time for me to resume my role. It was my brother Brandon. I stared at the screen, watching his name flash, and felt my stomach tighten. I knew what this was. I had received 100 calls like it before. Different words, same message. I need money. I answered anyway. Hey, Rachel. His voice was casual, friendly even, as if the last few weeks hadn't happened, as if he hadn't called me the budget police, as if I hadn't been excluded from a trip he was now calling to ask me to pay for. How's it going? Fine, I said. How was the trip? Amazing, he said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. Seriously, one of the best we've ever had. The weather was perfect. The food was incredible. You should have seen the lobster we had, like restaurant quality. And the fishing trip, man, Jake caught a huge marlin. We got it mounted. It's going to look great on Dad's wall. He was bragging to me about the trip I had been banned from, bragging about the lobster I had effectively paid for through years of subsidizing his life. The audacity was breathtaking. Sounds great, I said flatly. So, listen, he continued, his tone shifting slightly, getting to the point. The friendliness was a preamble, a warm-up for the ask. I'm in a bit of a bind. The trip was a little more expensive than I expected, and my credit card is kind of maxed out. I need to pay rent next week, and I'm like, $500 short. Could you spot me? Just until my next paycheck. I'll pay you back, I promise. $500. Just like that. Casually, easily, as if it were nothing. No acknowledgement of my exclusion. No apology for the budget police comment or the fun this year joke. Just an assumption that I would bail him out, like I always did, because that's what I was for. That's all I was for. I'll think about it, I said. There was a pause. I could almost hear his brain recalibrating. This wasn't the script. I was supposed to say yes immediately. I was supposed to ask where to send the money. I wasn't supposed to hesitate. Think about it? He said. Rachel, I need it by Friday. I could get evicted. This is serious. I said I'll think about it. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the effort of saying no, of not immediately agreeing, not immediately solving his problem, not immediately falling back into the pattern I had followed my entire adult life. It felt foreign, almost wrong. A lifetime of conditioning screaming at me to fix it, to help, to be the good sister. But also, underneath the discomfort, something else. Something that felt strangely like power. Like I had just discovered a muscle I didn't know I had. 2 days later, my mom called. Her voice was warm, sweet. The voice she used when she wanted something. The honey voice, I called it. Thick and cloying. Hi, honey. How are you? I hope you had a nice week. We missed you at the beach. Thanks, Mom. The weather was just perfect, every single day. Not a cloud in the sky. And the dinners, oh my goodness. Everyone said they were the best we've ever done. I wish you could have been there. But you didn't invite me, I thought. I said nothing. So, listen, she continued, the honey voice still in place. I need a little help. The trip was wonderful, but we went a bit over budget. You know how it is. Things add up. And now the water bill is due, and we're a little short. Could you cover it this month? It's only about $180. I'll pay you back as soon as we get caught up. $180, on top of Brandon's $500. They had been home less than 48 hours, and already the requests were piling up. The trip had barely ended, and they were already in crisis mode. And they were turning to me, as always, to solve it. I'll have to check my budget, I said. Check your budget? She sounded confused, almost offended. Rachel, it's just a water bill. You've always helped with these things. It's not a big deal. I know, but things are different now. I need to look at my own finances first. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, could almost hear her thinking, trying to figure out what was happening, why the usual script wasn't working. Well, okay, she said finally, her tone clipped. Let me know. She hung up without saying goodbye. That night, my dad called. His request was for $300 to cover an unexpected car repair. Unexpected. The same truck I had paid to repair at least 4 times already. The truck that was always having unexpected problems, always at the worst possible time, always requiring my help. I need to think about it, Dad, I told him. Think about it? He sounded bewildered. I was breaking the pattern, and he didn't know how to respond. Rachel, it's the truck. I need it for work. I can't get to jobs without it. I understand. I'll let you know. 3 calls in 3 days. 3 requests for money totaling almost $1,000, all from people who had excluded me, mocked me, and never once acknowledged my contributions. They came to me with their hands out, expecting the same automatic yes they had always received, expecting the machine to keep dispensing money on demand. But this time, I didn't give it to them. I didn't say no outright. I didn't slam the door. I just didn't say yes. I let them sit with the uncertainty, the discomfort of not knowing if their safety net was still there. It was the first time in my adult life I had hesitated. I had always been immediate, reliable, predictable. Yes, Of course. How much do you need? Here it is. But now I was pausing. I was thinking. I was considering whether I even wanted to help people who had treated me this way. And that hesitation was the beginning of everything. I needed to see it clearly. I needed to get out of the fog of habit and emotion and see the reality, in black and white, of what I had been doing. I needed to quantify it, to add it up, to put a number on it. Because numbers don't lie. Numbers don't get confused by guilt or love or the hope that this time will be different. Numbers just are. So that evening after dinner, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I pulled up my banking website and began to dig. I started with the last 5 years. Month by month, transaction by transaction, I went through every statement. I created a spreadsheet, meticulously logging every transfer, every payment, every expense that had gone to my family instead of to myself. It was tedious work. Some transactions I remembered immediately, could place them in context. Others I had forgotten entirely, had to be pieced together from dates and amounts. Some I had to cross-reference with texts and emails, reminding myself why I had sent $500 on a random Tuesday in March. The first year alone was staggering. I had paid my parents' electricity bill 5 times, their water bill 3 times. I had covered grocery runs that were supposed to be, "I'll pay you back," but never were. 6 grocery runs at an average of $150 each. $900 to feed people who mocked my frugality. I had sent Brandon money for rent twice, plus loans for car insurance, a security deposit on a new apartment, and something vaguely labeled emergency that he never explained and I never questioned. Total for Brandon in year 1, $2,300. Year 2 was worse. My dad's truck repairs started then. The transmission alone was $1,500. I remember that call, his voice panicked, saying he couldn't get to work, couldn't earn money, the family would starve. I transferred the money within an hour. Then there was the alternator, 6 months later, $800. Then new tires, $500. I found payments to pharmacies, to doctors' offices, to an oral surgeon for my mom's emergency root canal. $1,000 so she could chew food without pain. I found the plane tickets I had bought so they could attend a cousin's wedding in another state. $800 for 2 tickets, plus the hotel I had covered because they didn't have it in their budget. I found the new refrigerator, the new washing machine, the temporary help that became permanent. Total for year 2, $8,400. By year 3, the pattern was undeniable. I was paying for their lives, not supporting, not helping, but fully subsidizing. Their utilities, their groceries, their medical care, their transportation. Brandon was essentially on my payroll. Rent, bills, emergencies that were really just poor planning. Luxuries he couldn't afford but felt entitled to. A new TV because his old one broke. A vacation with friends because he deserved a break. A computer because he needed it for a job he quit 2 months later. Each expense seemed reasonable in isolation. Together they were a flood, draining my account month after month. Year 4 and year 5 continued the trend. The numbers kept climbing. The excuses kept coming. The pattern kept repeating. I started to see the cost of my generosity not just in dollars, but in opportunity. The down payment I could have saved for a house. The retirement fund I should have been building. The vacations I never took. The car I never upgraded. The life I never lived because I was too busy funding theirs. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. My eyes ached from staring at the screen. My hand was cramped from typing. My neck was stiff, but I had a complete picture. A document of everything I had given. A record of my own invisibility. The total was $47,432. $47,000 over 5 years. Money I had earned at a job that didn't pay exceptionally well. Money I had saved through discipline and sacrifice, through saying no to myself so I could say yes to them. Money I had poured into people who mocked me for being frugal, who excluded me for being difficult, who called me the budget police and celebrated when I wasn't there. I sat back in my chair, staring at the number glowing on my screen. $47,000. It was enough for a down payment on a nice condo in my city. It was enough for a fully funded emergency reserve, 3 to 6 months of expenses, the kind of cushion that lets you sleep at night. It was enough for years of retirement contributions, money that would have compounded and grown over decades. It was a life, a future, security. Instead, it had gone to them. And what had I received in return? A list that didn't include my name, a suggestion that I eat alone, laughter at my expense, a narrative that painted me as the problem. I saved the spreadsheet. I named it Family Financial Support, 2019 through 2024. Then I printed it out, all 38 pages. I held the stack in my hands, feeling its weight. This was my evidence, my proof, the truth they had never wanted to see and I had never wanted to admit. And I knew, with absolute certainty, sitting there in the quiet of my apartment at 1 a.m, what I had to do next. There was one person I trusted to help me see this clearly, to help me plan my next steps without letting emotion cloud my judgment. Her name was Evelyn Porter. She had been my supervisor at my first job out of college, a senior accountant with 30 years of experience and a reputation for being both brilliant and brutally honest. She didn't sugarcoat. She didn't coddle. She told you the truth, even when it was hard to hear, especially when it was hard to hear. That's why I respected her. She had taken me under her wing back then, when I was young and uncertain and trying to figure out how to be a professional. She taught me how to read financial statements, how to spot patterns in numbers, how to negotiate a salary, how to see my own value in a world that often tried to diminish it. We had stayed in touch over the years, grabbing coffee occasionally, trading emails, celebrating each other's successes. I had always valued her advice, always trusted her perspective, but I had never told her the full extent of my family's financial dependence on me. I was ashamed. Ashamed of being used. Ashamed of allowing it. But now I needed her strategic mind. Now I needed her clarity. I called her that Friday and asked if she could meet me for lunch. She agreed immediately, her voice sharp with curiosity. "You sound serious, Rachel. What's going on?" We met at a quiet diner near her office, a place with worn booths and good sandwiches where we could talk without being overheard. I had my laptop with me, the spreadsheet pulled up and ready. Over club sandwiches and iced tea, I told her everything. I started at the beginning, the first electricity bill, and worked my way forward. The years of financial support, the gradual escalation, the quiet sacrifices no one knew about, the exclusion from the beach trip, the group chat humiliation, the requests for money that started the moment they got home, the mocking, the dismissals, the way they saw my responsibility as a flaw instead of a sacrifice. Evelyn listened without interrupting. Her expression was unreadable, her eyes steady on mine. She ate her sandwich methodically, chewing, nodding occasionally, but never cutting in. She let me talk until I was done, until all the words were out, and I was sitting there, empty and raw. When I finished, she took a long sip of her iced tea and set the glass down deliberately. She looked at me for a moment, assessing, calculating. Then she spoke. "Show me the numbers." I turned my laptop toward her. She put on her reading glasses and leaned in, scrolling slowly through the spreadsheet. Her eyes moved across the rows and columns, the dates and amounts and categories. I watched her face for a reaction, some indication of what she was thinking. For a long time, she said nothing. Finally, she looked up at me over the top of her glasses. "Rachel, do you know what this is?" "What?" "This is a classic enablement pattern. Textbook. You've been the family's financial cushion for so long that they don't know how to function without you. They've built their lives on the assumption that you'll always be there to catch them. And worse, much worse, they've come to resent you for it. They resent their own dependence, so they diminish your contributions to make themselves feel better. They mock your frugality because it reminds them that they can't manage their own money. They exclude you because your presence is a mirror they don't want to look into." I nodded slowly. It made a painful kind of sense. It explained so much that had confused me, all the snide comments, all the dismissals. They weren't just ungrateful. They were defensive. "You have two choices," she continued. "You can keep doing what you've been doing. Keep being their safety net. Keep subsidizing their lives. and absorbing their insults, and accept that they will never respect you for it. That's one path, or you can cut them off, completely. Not slowly, not partially, completely, and let them experience the consequences of their own decisions. Cut them off, I repeated. The words felt heavy in my mouth. I'm not talking about a dramatic confrontation. Not yet. I'm talking about a systematic disengagement. You remove yourself from every financial entanglement, every auto-pay, every shared account, every expectation of support. You stop the payments, the transfers, the bailouts. You do it quietly, methodically, without explanation. And then you step back and let them figure it out. They'll panic, I said. Yes, they will. They will absolutely panic. And that panic will tell you everything you need to know about your value to them. If they only reach out when they need money, then you have your answer. You're a resource. If they genuinely want to repair the relationship, if they want to know you as a person and not just a provider, they'll do it without your wallet involved. But either way, you'll know the truth. She pulled out a pen and a napkin and began writing in her neat, precise handwriting. Here's what you need to do. First, identify every recurring payment you make on their behalf. Utilities, subscriptions, phone plans, anything automatic. Cancel them. All of them. Second, stop responding to financial requests. Don't say no. Don't argue. Don't justify. Just don't respond. Let the silence speak. Third, document everything. Keep records of the requests, the reactions, the patterns. You may need it later. And fourth, find support. A therapist, a friend, someone who can help you hold the line when they start trying to pull you back. I looked at the napkin, at the simple, clear steps she had outlined. It felt like a battle plan, a strategy for reclaiming my life. This won't be easy, she warned. They'll guilt you. They'll accuse you of abandoning them. They'll say you're selfish, ungrateful, cruel. They'll bring up everything they've ever done for you, real or imagined. They'll try every trick that's ever worked on you before. You have to be prepared for that. You have to know that their reaction is not your responsibility. I know, I said. And I did. I knew exactly how they would react, because I knew them. I had spent my whole life studying them, anticipating their needs, managing their emotions. I knew the guilt trips and the accusations that were coming. And I knew that this, cutting them off, would feel to them like the ultimate betrayal. But sitting there in that diner booth, looking at the spreadsheet of my own exploitation, I realized that the real betrayal had been happening for years. It was the betrayal of my trust, my generosity, my love. It was the way they took and took and took, and never once stopped to wonder what it was costing me. It was the way they excluded me and mocked me and made me feel small, all while depending on me to keep their lives afloat. That betrayal needed to end, and I was the only one who could end it. Evelyn reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're stronger than you think, Rachel. You've been carrying them for years. Literally carrying them. Now it's time to put them down and carry yourself. I squeezed back. Thank you. I paid for lunch. The last meal I would pay for on behalf of someone else for a long time. And I went home to begin. The process was methodical, just as Evelyn had suggested. I approached it like a work project, with lists and timelines and checkboxes. I made a master document of every financial tie, every auto-pay, every shared account, every expectation. Then I worked through them one by one, systematically, efficiently. But underneath the calm efficiency, my heart was pounding. Every step felt irreversible, a door closing that could never be opened again. I started with the recurring payments. Over the years, I had set up automatic transfers to help with various bills. It had seemed easier that way, more efficient. I wouldn't have to remember. They wouldn't have to ask. The money would just flow, quiet and invisible, keeping their lights on and their water running. Now those automatic payments felt like chains, binding me to a role I no longer wanted. My parents' electricity was on autopay from my account. So was their water. I logged into the utility websites one by one and removed my payment information. The process was simple. Just a few clicks. A confirmation button. Done. Confirmation emails arrived within minutes. Your automatic payment has been canceled. Future bills will be sent to the account holder. Each one felt like a small earthquake, a tremor in the foundation of the life I had been living. Next was the cell phone plan. This one was more complicated. 4 years ago, during one of their financial crises, I had added my parents and Brandon to my plan. 4 lines instead of 1. It was supposed to be temporary, just until they got back on their feet. That was the phrase we used. Just until we get back on our feet. But they never got back on their feet. Why would they? Their feet were on my shoulders. Every month I paid for 4 lines. An extra $150, sometimes more if someone went over their data. I called the carrier and navigated the phone tree until I reached a representative. I explained that I wanted to remove 3 lines from my account. The representative asked if I wanted to transfer them to a new account under a different name. No, I said. Just remove them. She processed the request without comment, professional and detached. Within an hour, I got an email confirmation. The lines would be deactivated at the end of the billing cycle. The streaming services were easy. Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, HBO Max. I had shared my passwords years ago, and they had simply never gotten their own accounts. Why would they? Mine was free. I logged into each service, went to account settings, and changed the passwords. They would try to log in one day soon, and find themselves locked out. If they wanted to watch something, they could pay for it themselves. Then came the digital payments. I opened Venmo and scrolled through my transaction history with Brandon. It was a long, depressing list, all one-directional. Me to him, me to him, me to him. $50, $100, $200, $500. The notes he had included were almost funny in their casualness. Thanks, sis. You're the best. I'll get you back. He never got me back. Not once in all those years did a payment flow in the opposite direction. I blocked him on the app. Not out of anger exactly, but out of self-protection. I couldn't bail him out if he couldn't reach me. The temptation would be too strong, the old habits too ingrained. I needed to remove the option entirely. The same with my parents on Zelle. Every month, sometimes every week, there had been something. A bill they couldn't cover. A repair they hadn't planned for. An emergency that was really just a failure to budget. I removed them from my contacts, deleted their information from the app. The pathway was closed. Finally, I went through my credit cards. I had given my mom my card number once, years ago, for a genuine emergency. Her car had broken down, and she needed a tow and a repair, and she didn't have her wallet. I had read her the number over the phone, thinking it was a one-time thing. She had used it dozens of times since. Amazon orders, grocery deliveries, prescriptions. Always with a vague promise to pay me back. Always with an excuse for why she couldn't right now. I logged into my credit card account and reported the card as compromised. Lost or stolen, I said. They deactivated it immediately and issued me a new one with a new number. The old number, the one she had saved in her phone, in her Amazon account, in a dozen apps and websites, would no longer work. She would try to use it, and it would decline. She would have to figure out another way. The whole process took about 3 hours. 3 hours to dismantle years of financial entanglement. When it was done, I sat back and looked at my computer screen. All the pathways I had created, all the ways I had made it easy for them to take from me, they were all closed now. The money would stop flowing. The support would end. I expected to feel guilty. I expected to feel like a bad daughter, a bad sister. I expected to hear my mother's voice in my head, telling me that family takes care of each other, that this isn't how we raised you. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt light. I felt free. For the first time in years, my money was mine. My future was mine. My next paycheck would go into my account and stay there, available for my needs, my goals, my life. I could save for a down payment. I could invest for retirement. I could take a vacation without calculating how much I needed to keep in reserve for their next emergency. And if that made me selfish, then I was ready to be selfish. I was ready to finally put myself first. The fallout started slowly, almost gently, like the first drops of rain before a storm. The first sign was a text from my mom on Monday morning. "Rachel, I tried to pay the water bill online, and it says the payment method was declined. Did something happen with your card? Maybe it expired?" I read the message and didn't respond. I set my phone down and went to work. I sat in meetings, answered emails, reviewed reports. Normal day. My phone buzzed a few more times, but I didn't look at it. By Tuesday, the messages were more frequent, more urgent. Brandon texted, "Hey, my phone's saying the service is about to be suspended. What's going on with the plan? Did you forget to pay the bill?" Then, an hour later, "Rachel, seriously, what's happening? I need my phone for work. This isn't funny." I didn't respond to him either. I made dinner. I watched TV. I went to bed early. Wednesday brought my dad. He called twice, left a voicemail. His voice was confused, a little irritated. "Rachel, honey, I'm not sure what's happening, but our electricity bill came in the mail, and it's addressed to us now. Not to you, to us. And it's higher than I expected. Can you call me back? We need to figure this out." Figure this out. As if it were a shared problem. As if we were a team working together, and there had been some miscommunication. As if I had somehow accidentally stopped paying their bills and just needed to correct the mistake. By Thursday, the group chat exploded. Not the original one, the one that had planned the beach trip. A new one. My parents and Brandon and me, a smaller group, a more targeted intervention. Brandon: "Rachel, what the hell is going on? Why isn't my phone working?" Mom: "Honey, the electricity bill is due in 3 days. I can't cover it right now. You know we're tight after the trip. Can you just take care of it like usual?" Dad: "I don't understand why you're not responding. We're family. Whatever's wrong, we can talk about it. Just call us." The messages came in rapid succession, one after another, each one more urgent than the last. I watched them pile up on my screen, notification after notification, the little red badge climbing higher. They were panicking, just as Evelyn had predicted. Their safety net was gone, and they didn't know how to catch themselves. I felt a pang of something. Guilt, maybe, or the deep-rooted instinct to help that I had carried my whole life. For a moment, I considered responding, considered explaining, considered just transferring the money one more time, just this once, just to ease the transition. But I didn't. I remembered the beach trip list. I remembered budget police. I remembered the photo of the lobster dinner, the champagne, the celebration of a trip I had been banned from, but was implicitly expected to fund. I remembered all the times they had mocked me, dismissed me, treated me as an obligation instead of a person. I let the messages sit. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I didn't engage at all. I simply wasn't there anymore. Not for them. Not in that way. On Friday, Brandon called me 17 times. 17. I watched my phone light up with his name, over and over, and I let each call go to voicemail. On Saturday, my mom started sending longer messages, walls of text filled with guilt and manipulation, the heavy artillery. "Rachel, I can't believe you're doing this to us. After everything we've done for you, we raised you. We gave you a home, put food on the table, made sacrifices for you. And this is how you repay us? By abandoning us when we need you? I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't the daughter I raised. This is cruel. This is selfish. I hope you're proud of yourself. Abandoning them. As if not paying their bills was abandonment. As if my sole purpose in life was to fund their existence. As if all the years of my childhood, my upbringing, had been a transaction. And now I owed them indefinitely for the service of being born. On Sunday, my dad tried a different tactic. He sent a calm, measured message, the voice of reason. "Rachel, I think there's been some misunderstanding. Let's sit down and talk about this like adults. I'm sure we can work something out. No need to make this bigger than it has to be. Just come over for dinner this week and we'll sort it all out. Work something out. Sort it all out." The words were transparent. They wanted to negotiate. to find a way back to the old arrangement, the one where I paid and they took and no one questioned it. They wanted to smooth things over, patch things up, get the money flowing again. They didn't want to understand. They wanted to manage. I didn't respond to any of them. The silence was my message, and every day it continued. Every unanswered text and ignored voicemail, the more they felt its weight. By the end of the second week, the fallout was complete. Brandon's phone was shut off. He was off my plan, and hadn't set up his own. My parents had to scramble to pay their own utilities, probably with a credit card they would later ask me to pay off. The streaming services stopped working. The Amazon orders stopped going through. The whole carefully constructed web of my support had collapsed, and they were left standing in the wreckage, finally seeing the structure that had been holding them up all along. And me, I was still silent, still removed, still watching from a distance as they struggled to do the things I had been doing for them for years, things they had never appreciated, things they had mocked me for. It wasn't cruelty, it was clarity, and they needed to sit with it a while longer before I would say a single word. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after I had cut them off. 3 weeks of silence, of unanswered messages, of watching them struggle from a distance. 3 weeks of holding the line, even when it was hard, even when the guilt crept in at night. My mom called from my dad's phone, since Brandon's was still disconnected. I answered, knowing this conversation was inevitable. It had to happen eventually. The pressure had been building, and now it was going to break. Rachel. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the strain underneath, the forced calm of someone barely holding it together. We need to talk. This has gone on long enough. Okay, I said. Come to the house tonight, 7 o'clock. We're going to sit down as a family and discuss this situation. Discuss this situation. As if it were a business matter, a problem to be solved with the right agenda and talking points. As if we could negotiate our way back to normal. I'll be there, I said. I spent the afternoon preparing. I printed out my spreadsheet, all 38 pages, all $47,000 documented in rows and columns and categories. I organized it into sections, by year, by recipient, by type of expense. I put it all in a thick folder, the kind you use for important documents, the kind that says this matters. I wanted the physical weight of it in my hands. I wanted them to see the size of it, the heft of it. This was my evidence. My proof. The truth they had never wanted to see. I arrived at my parents' house at 7. The sun was setting, the sky streaked with orange and pink. It would have been beautiful if I weren't walking into a war. Brandon's car was already in the driveway, next to my parents'. The whole family, assembled and waiting. The house was the same as always. Same paint, same landscaping, same wreath on the door. I had grown up here. I had 1,000 memories here, good and bad. Now I was walking in with a folder that might end my relationship with everyone inside. I didn't knock. I never knocked. I just opened the door and walked in. They were all in the living room, arranged like a tribunal. My dad in his usual armchair, the one with the worn arms where he always sat. My mom on the couch, perched on the edge, her posture rigid, her hands clasped in her lap. Brandon in the other chair, slouched, arms crossed, his expression a mix of annoyance and hostility. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, like I was wasting his time. The room felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just felt bigger. I had come here so many times in so many roles. The dutiful daughter, the helpful sister, the quiet problem solver. Now I was something else. I was the one with the folder, the one with the truth. Rachel, my mom said, gesturing to the empty spot on the couch beside her. Sit down. Let's talk. I didn't sit next to her. I sat in the remaining chair, across from all of them, maintaining distance. I placed the folder on the coffee table in front of me with a deliberate thud. The sound was loud in the quiet room. They all looked at it. What's that? Brandon asked, eyeing it like it might bite him. We'll get to it, I said. But first, I want to say something. My mom took a breath, ready to interrupt, to take control of the conversation, to steer it where she wanted it to go. I didn't let her. For the last 3 weeks, I said, my voice steady. You've been sending me messages, asking me why I stopped paying your bills, accusing me of abandoning you, calling me selfish and cruel. You've been acting like I did something wrong, like I betrayed you. I looked at each of them in turn. But the truth is, I just stopped doing something I was never obligated to do in the first place. We're family, my mom said. Family helps each other. I agree, I said. Family helps each other. But helping goes both ways. And what I've been doing for the last 5 years, what's documented in that folder, that wasn't help. That was me carrying you. All of you. Financially. And not once, not a single time did any of you acknowledge it, or thank me for it, or even seem to know it was happening. That's not true, my dad said. We've always appreciated you, Rachel. Have you? I picked up the folder and opened it. I pulled out the first page, the summary. The total at the bottom, circled in red. This is every dollar I've paid on your behalf over the last 5 years. Every utility bill, every repair, every loan, every emergency. $47,000. The number landed like a bomb. I saw it hit them, each in turn. My mom's mouth fell open. My dad went pale. Even Brandon sat up straighter, his hostility flickering into something else. Surprise, maybe fear. That can't be right, my mom said. It's right. It's all documented. Every transaction, every date, every amount. I handed the folder to my dad. Look at it, page by page. See for yourself. He took the folder with shaking hands. He opened it slowly, like he was afraid of what he'd find. His eyes moved across the first page, then the second. He turned to the section labeled Utilities, and I saw him flinch. Then Medical. Then Vehicle Repairs. Then the tab with Brandon's name on it. Jesus, he said quietly. I turned to Brandon. He was staring at the folder, his face red. That section there, the one with your name, that's everything I've sent you over 5 years. Rent, deposits, emergencies, random requests. It's over $9,000, Brandon. $9,000 from your tightwad sister. I was going to pay you back, he said, but his voice was weak. No, you weren't. You never paid back a single dollar, because you never thought of it as a loan. You thought of it as your due, your allowance. Money you were entitled to because you're family. I leaned forward. And this is the same brother who called me the budget police, who said you could finally have fun without me, who laughed about me in the group chat. He looked away, jaw tight. I turned to my parents. You excluded me from the beach trip. You told me I made things uncomfortable, that you needed a break from me. You let Brandon mock me and you said nothing. And then the minute you got home, you called me asking for money. As if nothing had happened. As if I was just a service you could turn on and off. We didn't mean it like that, my mom said, her voice cracking. Then how did you mean it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you only value me when I'm useful, when I'm paying your bills and solving your problems. The minute I stop being useful, I'm excluded. I'm the difficult one. I'm the one who needs to reflect on how I come across. Tears were running down my mom's face now. My dad was still staring at the folder, turning pages, not speaking. Brandon was looking at the floor. I'm not asking for the money back, I said quietly. I know I'll never see it. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to tell you that it's over. I will not pay another bill. I will not cover another emergency. I will not fund another vacation or grocery run or rent payment. You are adults. You are capable of taking care of yourselves. And from now on, you're going to have to. My mom looked up at me, her face wet, her eyes red. You're abandoning us. No, I said. I'm finally treating you like you're capable of standing on your own. I'm giving you the respect of believing you can figure it out. That's not abandonment. That's the most respect I've ever shown you. I stood up, leaving the folder on the table in front of them. 38 pages of my life, my sacrifice, my silent love. Let them read it. Let them see. If you want to have a relationship with me, I said, It needs to be based on something other than my money. You need to see me as a person, not a resource. You need to value me for who I am, not what I provide. And you need to apologize. Not for needing help, for how you treated me. I walked to the door. Behind me, I heard my mom start to cry harder. Heard Brandon saying something angry and defensive. Heard my dad's low voice trying to calm things down. I didn't turn around. I stepped outside into the cool evening air. The stars were coming out. I got in my car and drove home. My hands were steady on the wheel. My heart was calm. The confrontation was over. The truth was out. And whatever came next, I knew I had done the right thing. I didn't hear from them for 2 weeks. The silence was total, absolute. After months of constant financial requests and the recent barrage of panicked messages, the sudden nothing was almost disorienting. I found myself checking my phone, out of habit, half expecting a notification. Sometimes I even missed the drama, the feeling of being needed, even if that need was just for my money. But mostly, I felt relief. Then the attacks began. It started with Brandon. He called me on a Thursday evening, and I could tell from the first word that this wasn't a reconciliation call. His voice was tight, almost trembling with rage. "You know what you are, Rachel," he said, not waiting for me to answer. "You're a traitor, a self-righteous, bitter traitor. You had more than the rest of us, and instead of being generous about it, you kept score like some kind of robot accountant. Wrote it all down, saved every receipt. Who does that? No wonder you're alone. No wonder you don't have anyone. No one could ever love someone as cold as you." I listened without interrupting. I let him get it all out, every insult, every accusation. When he finally stopped, breathing hard, I said simply, "I'm sorry you feel that way." And I hung up. The next day, my mom called. Her approach was different, softer on the surface but more insidious underneath. The guilt trip was masterfully constructed. "Rachel, honey, I've been thinking a lot about our conversation, and I'm hurt. I'm really deeply hurt. I couldn't sleep last night. Your father, he's not doing well. He hasn't been sleeping either. He's worried about the bills, yes. But more than that, he's worried about you. He thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown. The stress, the anger, this coldness. It's not healthy. We're your parents. We love you. We just want you to get help. Get help." She was pathologizing my boundary setting. She was turning my clarity into a symptom, my self-respect into a mental illness that needed treatment. "I'm fine, Mom," I said. "I'm better than I've been in years, actually." "You don't sound fine. You sound detached, robotic. This isn't the Rachel I know. Maybe you never knew me. Maybe you only knew what I could do for you." She was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice that was low and wounded, "That's a terrible thing to say to your mother. It's the truth." She hung up on me. The guilt campaign escalated over the next week. My dad, who had been relatively quiet, started sending me messages. Long, rambling texts about family values, about loyalty, about how he had raised me better than this. "Family sticks together, Rachel. That's what your grandmother always said. She would turn over in her grave if she could see what you're doing. She came to this country with nothing, built a life from scratch, and she always put family first. You're disgracing her memory, using my dead grandmother against me. She had passed away 3 years ago, and I had loved her dearly. Invoking her, twisting her memory into a weapon, was a low blow. It landed. I cried that night, not because I thought he was right, but because I realized how far he was willing to go, how deep he was willing to cut, to get me back in line. But I didn't cave. I didn't respond to the guilt. I didn't apologize for protecting myself. I let their accusations wash over me and then wash away. Every day I held firm, I felt a little stronger, a little more certain that I had made the right choice. 2 weeks after the confrontation, something shifted. The attack stopped. The long messages stopped coming. The phone stopped ringing. The silence returned. But it was different this time. It felt less like a standoff, less like two sides dug into trenches. It felt more like a pause, a breath. Maybe they were regrouping. Maybe they were rethinking. I didn't know. But I stayed ready. I stayed firm. And I kept living my life. Then, on a Saturday afternoon, about a month after I had cut them off, my dad called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Thought it might be spam. But something made me pick up. Rachel. His voice was quiet, hesitant, completely different from the accusations of the previous weeks. "Hi, Dad." There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, hear the effort it was taking him to speak. "Your mother and I, we've been talking. A lot. And we went to see someone, a financial advisor, someone who could help us get our situation under control." He stopped, gathered himself. "Brandon moved out last week. He's got a second job now, delivering food in the evenings. He's trying to get himself together." I didn't say anything. I just listened. "I went through the folder again," he continued, his voice thick. "The one you left. I read every page, looked at every number. I even found some receipts in a drawer, things I didn't remember, things you paid for that I had completely forgotten about." He stopped again. "Rachel, I had no idea. I thought you helped us sometimes. I didn't know it was like that. I didn't know it was so much." I felt my throat tighten. "I never wanted to keep score, Dad. I just wanted to help. But at some point, helping turned into enabling, and it wasn't good for any of us. I know that now. I see that." He took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm sorry for taking you for granted, for making you feel like a bank instead of a daughter, for the things I said, the texts I sent. I was scared and angry, and I took it out on you. That was wrong. It wasn't a perfect apology. It was clumsy, incomplete." He didn't mention the beach trip, the exclusion, the way they had lied about me to Denise and probably others, but it was the most honest thing he had said to me in years, maybe ever. "Thank you for saying that, Dad," I said softly. "It means a lot. I don't expect things to go back to normal," he said. "I know we have to earn your trust back. I just wanted you to know that we're trying. We're really trying. We didn't make plans for Christmas. It was too soon. The wounds were still too fresh, too raw. But something had shifted. A tiny crack of light in a door that had been slammed shut. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of it. The beginning. 6 months after I cut them off, I bought a condo. It was small. Just 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a galley kitchen, a modest living room, a little balcony that looked out over a courtyard with a tree. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every square foot, every wall, every floorboard was something I had earned and paid for with my own money. Money I had saved because I had finally stopped giving it away. The closing was surreal. I sat at a table surrounded by lawyers and documents, signing my name over and over, and I kept thinking about all the times I had almost had this. All the down payments I had almost saved. All the times I had gotten close and then drained my account for someone else's emergency. Now, finally, I was here. I was doing this. For myself. I moved in on a Saturday. I didn't have much. Just boxes of books, some clothes, a few kitchen things. I had sold most of my old furniture. Wanted to start fresh. I spent the first few weeks slowly furnishing the place, choosing each piece carefully. A couch I loved, not just the cheapest option. A bed that was actually comfortable. Art for the walls. Things that made me happy when I looked at them. No hand-me-downs, no compromises. Just things I chose, for the space I owned. The first night I slept there, I cried. I lay in my new bed, in my new home, and I let the tears come. Not from sadness, from relief, from the overwhelming, almost disorienting sensation of having done something entirely for myself, of having a place that was fully, completely mine, a place no one could take from me, a place that represented everything I had fought to reclaim. My relationship with my family didn't magically heal. Some wounds don't close quickly, some scars are permanent. My mom and I talked, occasionally. Stilted conversations, polite but careful. She had apologized, in her way, a tearful phone call where she said she was sorry things had gotten so hard. Sorry I had been stressed. Sorry we had all made mistakes. It wasn't a real apology, not an acknowledgement of what they had actually done, but I accepted it as the best she could manage. We were cordial now. We talked about the weather, her garden, my work, surface things, safe things. Maybe that was the best we could do. Brandon was harder. He resented me, I think, not just for cutting him off financially, but for making him see the truth of how much he had taken. He had gotten his life together, more or less. He had a steady job now, paid his own rent, even started a savings account. But he never thanked me, never acknowledged what my years of support had cost me. We spoke at family events, brief and awkward exchanges, and that was it. I had hoped, maybe naively, that adversity would make him grow. Maybe it had, but it hadn't made him grateful, at least not to me. My dad was the exception. He called me once a week, just to talk. He told me about the budget he and my mom were following, about the progress they were making on their debt. He asked about my life, my job, my condo. He seemed genuinely interested, genuinely proud. He told me once that he admired what I had done, how I had stood up for myself. It wasn't something he was good at, he said. He wished he had learned it earlier. It wasn't the relationship we'd had before, but maybe it was better, more honest, more real. Holidays were different now. I no longer felt obligated to host, to plan, to pay for everything. I attended when I wanted to, contributed what I felt comfortable with, and set boundaries around what I didn't. The first Christmas after the fallout was awkward. Silences at the table. Strained conversation. Eyes that didn't quite meet. But there was also something new there. A respect, maybe. A carefulness. An understanding that the old rules were gone and we were all figuring out the new ones. Or maybe that's too optimistic. Maybe they were just being careful because they knew I wouldn't tolerate the old behavior. Either way, it was better. It was manageable. It was a family I could be part of without losing myself. One evening, about a year after I had cut them off, I was sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sunset behind the buildings. I thought about the person I had been 2 years ago. Exhausted, unappreciated, bleeding money and emotional energy into people who couldn't see me. And I thought about the person I was now. Rested, secure, proud of what I had built. The silence I had chosen, the boundaries I had set, they had been the hardest things I had ever done. There were nights I doubted myself, wondered if I was being too harsh, too cold. There were moments I almost caved, almost picked up the phone and offered to help. But I held firm. I trusted my decision, even when it hurt, and it had been worth it. It had given me my life back. On my refrigerator, held up by a magnet from a vacation I took by myself, I had taped a small note. Just a few words, written in my own handwriting. You are not responsible for other people's choices. I read it every morning. I let it remind me that love doesn't mean self-sacrifice, that helping doesn't mean enabling, that family doesn't mean giving until there's nothing left of you. I had spent so many years as the foundation for everyone else. Now I was finally building my own life on top of myself. I still help people sometimes. That part of me hasn't changed. I donate to charities I believe in. I support friends when they're in genuine need. I give generously when it's appropriate, and when it doesn't cost me my own security. But I don't give from an empty cup anymore. I don't sacrifice my future for someone else's present. I learned the hard way that generosity without boundaries isn't generosity. It's self-destruction. Some people might call me hard now. Cold, unforgiving. I've heard the whispers, seen the looks. But the people who truly know me, who see how I live and what I've built, they understand. I'm not cold. I'm protected. I learned that my warmth was being exploited, so I put up walls. Not to keep everyone out, but to keep myself intact. To make sure I had something left to give. If you've ever been the one who gives and gives and gives until there's nothing left, if you've ever been the one they turn to only when they need something, If you've ever felt invisible except when your wallet is open, I want you to know something. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to put yourself first. It's not selfish. It's survival. And sometimes, it's the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them. Because as long as you keep catching them, they will never learn to fly. My family trip used to be the highlight of the year. The beach house, the dinners, the photos. I used to count down the days. Used to feel like that week was what made me part of the family. Now I know better. Now I take my own trips. To places I choose. Doing things I love. With people who see me for more than my usefulness. People who value my company, not my credit card. And let me tell you, those trips are the best I've ever had. If you've been in a situation like mine, I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and tell me how you handled it. Did you set boundaries? Did you cut people off? How did it go? And if this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is remind each other that we're not alone, that we deserve to be seen, that we deserve to be valued, that we are enough, exactly as we are. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves. You're worth it.